All right, let's dive into something kind of universally, fascinating and complex, right?
Mm,
Love. But we're not, going full on philosophy here. We're going to be exploring some real world perspectives,
yeah.
even some science.
Sounds pretty interesting. What do we have?
Well, you know that podcast, Say It Right,
Hmm.
the one for English language learning?
Hmm.
They had this episode really caught my attention. You know, tackled the whole question: Is love essential in life? And they got some fascinating arguments. Both sides.
Oh, I see where this is going. Not just romantic love.
Exactly.
It's about the connections, right? Like
Right, right.
meaningful connections, the ones that make you, happier and just better overall,
Yeah.
well-being.
Right. And they
Yeah.
actually even bring up this Harvard study about close relationships being super important, a
Yeah.
major predictor of lifelong happiness.
Yeah.
I think even those of us who aren't, like super romantic might find some surprising stuff in them.
I'm all ears. What were some of the things that stood out to you from that episode?
So they have these two guests, right? Emily and John. And they have very different views on, love's role in life.
Yeah.
Emily, definitely team love, big believer that it brings a sense of completeness and meaning to life. But what I found interesting is that she wasn't like just talking about romantic love.
Right, yeah. More like describing this broader sense of joy, right? And
Hmm.
connection, a feeling of truly belonging. And that's more nuanced, right? Than just the typical love conquers all.
Totally. And
So,
then you've got John, who really values, personal freedom, doing his own thing,
yeah, yeah.
pursuing his interests. He doesn't, completely dismiss connection, but he gets that fulfillment through
Yeah.
friendships, family, hobbies, things like that.
Interesting. It makes you wonder, right? Are there multiple paths to fulfillment? Can we be happy through different kinds of connections, right? Even if romantic love isn't the center of it all, and if so, like what does that mean for how we think about our relationships and what we want to do in life?
Those are some big questions.
Yeah.
And speaking of prioritizing,
Yeah.
you know, there was this vocabulary lesson woven into the episode that really kind of struck me. This word cherish. It kept coming up. They were talking about cherishing the things that give our lives meaning.
Yeah.
Whether it's loved ones or passions or even our own personal growth.
Cherish. Yeah, it's powerful. It's not just appreciating something, right? It's
Yeah.
it's more it's actively, nurturing and protecting what matters.
Yeah.
Makes you think, right? Like what do you cherish most in your life and how do you actively cultivate those things?
That is a great question and one worth reflecting on. For me, it's about I don't want to spoil the end of my own personal journey, in life, but I am curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. Well, for me, cherishing is
Let's
about
hold on. Before you answer, I just
yeah.
realized we're getting ahead of ourselves. We haven't even touched on that Harvard study, the one about close relationships being so key for long-term happiness.
Right. Yeah, yeah, the science of connection. That's where things get really fascinating because here's the thing, that study, it actually supports John's perspective a little bit, the one that puts emphasis on finding fulfillment outside of just, romantic love. They found that close relationships of all types, family, friends, community groups, they all had a big positive impact on people's happiness and how long they lived.
Wow. So it's not just about finding, the one. It's about nurturing all these different
Yeah.
connections, right? The ones that bring meaning to our lives. That actually aligns with what Emily was saying too, about love not being limited to just romance. It's like they were both on to something, just coming at it from different places.
Exactly. And what's so valuable about that Harvard study is that it's not just, stories or opinions, it's real evidence. Having close relationships, no matter what kind, is really essential for a fulfilling life. It makes you think about how we can design our lives and our communities to better foster those connections.
That's a really good point. It's not just individual choices, right? It's about the environment, making it a place where meaningful relationships can really thrive. Speaking of environments, got to say I really enjoyed the tone and the style of this Say It Right episode. Alex, the host, he's got such a clear, engaging way of explaining things, especially the language learning parts.
Yeah, I agree. He's great at breaking down these, complex ideas, but in a way that's both informative and encouraging, right? You
Yeah.
can tell he really cares about helping his listeners, succeed. And that's huge when you're doing something as challenging as learning a whole new language. But it also makes you think about how that same approach, right? That same sense of support and encouragement, how helpful that can be in any learning environment, whether it's a classroom or a workplace or even within our own families, right?
It's true. It's just like a reminder that how we communicate, right? The tone we use, the level of support we offer can really impact someone's willingness to learn and to grow.
Yeah.
You know what? That actually ties back to the theme of connection too. Effective communication, it's really the foundation of any strong relationship, right? Whether it's
Uh,
between, teacher and student or colleagues or even romantic partners. It's about being able to express yourself clearly, right?
Mm.
Listen attentively, build understanding. It's almost as if language itself is a form of connection, a bridge,
Yeah.
you know, allows us to share our experiences and build deeper bonds.
Wow. That's beautiful. Language as a bridge, a conduit for connection. I love that. And it makes me think even when we're learning a new language, we're not just, learning words and grammar rules. We're opening ourselves up to a whole new world,
Mhm.
new perspectives, new cultures, new ways of being, It's an invitation to connect with people, but on a deeper level.
That's really profound. And it reminds me of something else from the podcast that really hit me. This idea that language learning is not just about, mastering a skill. It's about expanding how we understand the world and ourselves. It's about embracing the beauty of diversity, recognizing the things that connect us all.
Absolutely. It's a journey. Personal growth and interpersonal growth.
Yeah.
You know what? That brings us right back to our original question. Is love truly essential in life?
I think we can safely say the answer is yes.
But not necessarily in the way we first think, right?
Exactly. It's not just about romantic love. It's about that whole spectrum of meaningful connections, the ones that bring us joy,
Yeah.
purpose, sense of belonging. And as that Harvard study showed, it's essential for our well-being,
Yeah.
physically and emotionally.
And what's so cool is even language learning, seemingly unrelated, it ties back to this central theme.
It's like we've uncovered this web of connections, right? Where love, language, happiness, well-being, they're all intertwined.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
Well, I'm definitely ready to dive deeper, but before we do that, let's just take a second. Reflect on what we've learned so far. We've explored two, contrasting views on love's role in life. Right?
Yeah.
We delved into the power of cherishing what matters most,
Mm.
and we uncovered the science behind the link between close relationships and happiness.
And we even touched on how language learning can broaden our sense of connection and understanding.
But there's so much more to unpack, I think. And I have a
Mhm.
feeling things are going to get even more interesting. Stay with us as we continue our deep dive into the world of love, language, and the pursuit of a fulfilling life.
As we go deeper into this web of connections, there's another thread I find really interesting. The podcast touched on how people who really nurture their relationships, they tend to live longer, healthier lives.
Right.
Really?
Right. It's not just about happiness. There's an actual physical benefit to feeling connected.
And it's not just, stories. There's more and more research coming out that shows strong social connections. They really do have a positive impact on our physical and mental well-being. It's almost like having a really good social life. It acts as a buffer against stress. And it even strengthens our immune system.
So investing in our relationships, it's like investing in our health. It's a good reminder that connection, it's not just, a nice feeling. It's a really important part of living a long and fulfilling life.
Exactly. And it makes me think about how we often compartmentalize our lives,
Mm.
work, relationships, personal growth, when really they're all connected.
Yeah, you're right. We forget that our emotional well-being, it directly impacts our physical health and vice versa too.
Exactly. And speaking of interconnectedness, I want to go back to that idea of cherishing, the one that really stuck with me from the podcast. It seems especially relevant now, in today's world,
Yeah.
where we're constantly being told what we should value, what we should prioritize.
I totally agree. It's so easy to get caught up in all the noise.
Yeah.
And lose sight of what really matters to us. How do we even start to stay grounded,
Yeah.
connected to the things we want to cherish?
Well, I think it starts with looking inward.
Yeah.
Taking a moment to ask ourselves what brings me joy, what makes me feel alive, feel connected, what gives my life, a sense of purpose.
It's about figuring out those core values and passions that drive us.
Yes, and once we've figured those out, it's about making an effort, a conscious effort to nurture them. Whether it's, setting aside time with loved ones or pursuing creative things or even just being present in the moment.
Being intentional.
Yeah.
Making sure our choices line up with what we really cherish.
I think you nailed it. In this whole conversation, it makes me think about the power of gratitude.
Oh, I love that you brought that up, gratitude.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful tool for appreciating and cherishing what we have.
Absolutely. When we take the time to be thankful for the good things in our lives, even when things are tough, it changes our perspective. It
Yeah.
helps us focus on what truly matters.
It's like putting on, those rose-colored glasses.
Yeah.
Helps us see the beauty, the abundance that's already there.
Exactly. It's not about, ignoring the bad stuff. It's about choosing to focus on the positive, the things we cherish.
Speaking of gratitude, I'm really grateful for this deep dive. It's been such a good conversation.
Me too. I feel like we've covered so much. Different perspectives on love, the science of happiness, the power of language and communication, even the importance of cherishing what we have.
And let's not forget the Say It Right podcast itself. It's a fantastic resource for anyone learning English. You can tell that Alex, the host, he really puts a lot of thought and care into making it a supportive and encouraging environment for learning.
Absolutely. And I think that's another important takeaway from this deep dive, whether we're talking about, relationships or language learning or any kind of growth, really. Having a supportive environment, it's crucial. It allows us to take risks, to make mistakes, and ultimately to become the best versions of ourselves.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
So if we had to boil down everything we've talked about into one central theme, it seems like meaningful connections, they really are essential for a happy and fulfilling life.
Whether those connections are, romantic or platonic or familial or even through shared interests and passions.
They all contribute to our sense of belonging,
Yeah.
purpose, well-being.
And they enrich our lives in so many ways.
What's really striking me is that happiness, it's not something that just happens to us.
It's something we cultivate.
Exactly. It's about making choices that line up with our values, nurturing our relationships, appreciating the good things in our lives. It's about taking ownership of our own happiness.
And recognizing that we have the power to create a life that's full of meaning and joy.
It's empowering, right?
Yeah.
To know that we're not just passive recipients of happiness,
Yeah.
but active participants
Yeah.
in creating it.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder that the journey itself, it's just as important as the destination.
Speaking of journeys, I think it's important to acknowledge that the path to happiness, it's not always a straight line.
Of course. There are going to be bumps, challenges, moments of doubt.
But it's those experiences, the good and the bad, they're what shape us, right? They make life worth living.
And it's in those moments, the vulnerable ones, the uncertain ones, that's often where we discover our greatest strength, our resilience.
That's so important. It's about embracing the whole journey.
Yeah.
Imperfections and all. And remember, we don't have to go through it alone.
Exactly. We have our support systems, our loved ones, our communities.
And sometimes just reaching out, connecting with others. That can be the most powerful step we can take toward happiness and well-being.
This is reminding me of another good point from the podcast. They talked about how even when we feel, lost or disconnected or unsure of our path, there's still beauty there. There's still meaning to be found.
That's a really reassuring thought, especially when we're going through tough times. How do you suggest we tap into that sense of meaning and beauty when we're feeling lost?
I think it's about remembering that it's okay to not have all the answers. It's okay to embrace the unknown, to trust that even in the midst of uncertainty, there's something bigger at play.
It's about having faith in ourselves, in the journey.
And leaning on the people we have, the people who love us and care for us.
Because even when we feel lost, we're never really alone. And sometimes it's in those moments, the vulnerable ones, the uncertain ones, that's when we discover our greatest strength and resilience.
Absolutely. It's often when we're pushed outside of our comfort zone that we grow the most. And that growth, it can lead to new insights, new connections, a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
It's all part of the journey. And a journey worth embracing, wouldn't you say?
Wholeheartedly. But I think there's one more layer we should peel back before we wrap up.
Mm.
We've talked a lot about, external connections, those relationships, social interactions, the things that make our lives richer.
Right. Yeah. We've covered a lot there. But where does that leave like our own pursuit of happiness, individually?
That's a really good point. Those external connections, they're vital, but I think it's just as important to cultivate a sense of inner peace, contentment. True happiness, it's not just determined by, what's happening around us.
So it's about finding that balance
Mm.
between those outward connections and our own like internal world.
Exactly. And that looks different for everybody.
It does, yeah. Some
Mhm.
people, they find that inner peace through things like meditation or mindfulness. Others, they connect with it through creative stuff or spending time in nature
It's about finding what works for you, what helps you tap into that stillness inside.
and making it a priority. Because
Yeah.
because when we cultivate that inner peace, it kind of ripples outward, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It affects our relationships, how we interact with the world, our whole outlook on life.
It's like this wellspring of positivity
Yeah.
flows out, touches everything, everyone around us.
Yeah. It's a powerful reminder that happiness, it's got all these different sides to it,
Yeah.
right? It's not just external stuff. It's also about cultivating a sense of well-being, but one that comes from within.
Sounds like we're encouraging our listeners to become inner peace ninjas.
I like that. And you know what? It ties in perfectly with that Harvard study we talked about, the one that found strong social connections lead to a longer, healthier life.
Oh yeah. It seems like fostering that inner peace, it actually can have a positive impact on our physical well-being too.
Exactly. It's all connected. When we feel good on the inside,
Yeah.
it shows on the outside. It makes us more resilient, helps us handle challenges better, even boosts our immune system.
Wow. So cultivating inner peace, it's not just about feeling good, it's about being well. It's about taking this holistic approach to our well-being, right? Recognizing that our mental, emotional, and physical health, they're all
Couldn't
intertwined.
have said it better myself.
Well, on that note of holistic well-being, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. It's been an amazing journey exploring all these complexities of love, language, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah.
What are some of the key takeaways you'd want our listeners to remember?
Well, I think the most important thing is recognizing the power of meaningful connections, romantic, familial, platonic, whatever they are. Those bonds, they enrich our lives in so many ways. And as that Harvard study showed, they're crucial for our long-term happiness and well-being.
And don't forget about cherishing those connections.
Yeah.
Actively nurturing our relationships, showing gratitude for the people in our lives.
Yes. And just as important, cultivating that inner peace, finding the things that help us connect with that sense of calm and contentment within.
Because when we nourish both our internal and external worlds, we create this solid foundation for a truly fulfilling life.
Beautifully said. And I think it's important to remember the journey to happiness, it's ongoing. It's not, a destination. It's a path, one that we're constantly creating.
It's about making those choices, the ones that line up with our values, prioritizing the things that bring us joy, and embracing it all, the ups and the downs that life throws at us.
And always remember, even when we feel, lost or uncertain, there's still beauty out there. There's still meaning to be found. It's about trusting the process, leaning on our support systems, remembering that we're never really alone.
Well said. And on that note of hope and interconnectedness, I think it's time to bring this episode of the Deep Dive to a close. Thank you all for joining us on this exploration of love, language, and the pursuit of a fulfilling life.
It's been a pleasure diving deep with you.
And to our listeners, keep seeking those connections, the ones that make life truly extraordinary. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.